Welcome to a Wartales video. Very excited to be bringing this one to you. I've been keenly awaiting the closed beta invitations for Wartales, and now that they have arrived, it is very exciting. Quick little message at the start of this one. I have been in contact with the Shiro development team, and they have reviewed and approved this footage for release. So this is not breaking the NDA of the closed beta, just trying to get a little bit of psych going in the community for its release. In this video, I'm going to cover a few things, mainly focusing on the changes between the demo and the closed beta, or what will become the early access. It is looking absolutely great, and you will be noticing changes very, very early on. So stay tuned, let me know what you think, and I hope to see you on Discord and talk about it some more. Okay, so one of the first points to note is that the game is still in early access, and there's a lot of new content. I'll kind of touch on some of that in this video, but there are some bugs around. However, I have been able to finish every piece of the new content, all the new fights and that kind of thing. So there shouldn't be any absolutely game-breaking bugs that basically mean you cannot continue. So the way that I'm going to do this video is that there's going to be mostly just some kind of gameplay of me in the background, playing through a new group. I've chosen a kind of a melee team, and we're going to be going and trying to finish things without having any ranged units in the party. So if you followed me on Discord or through any of my other videos, I kind of like doing little challenges, and one of the really cool things that I found about Wartales is that there's just a lot of variation, and there's not necessarily, well, there's very far from one right way to do it. So it is a really enjoyable game to just kind of play how you want. So I'm just going to talk through a bunch of stuff that's changed in the demo while there's a little bit of gameplay going on in the background. Sometimes I might call out particular things here or there just to call them to your attention, but mostly it's just going to be me kind of talking through the new features and what I have found really, really cool about the closed beta so far. So warning, there will be spoilers. So it is uncut gameplay, so if you really want to explore this world for yourself, I would recommend stopping the video or maybe turning away and just listening to what I say rather than watching, but you know, I'll let you suit yourself there. I try not to have too many spoilers, and it is only the first kind of maybe hour and a half of a new party, so you're not going to see everything that the game has to offer, that's for sure. Okay, so jumping into kind of content. So in the demo, there was one region that you could access, Tilton County, and you start in the same region in the closed beta as well. Those with a really keen eye might have seen that eventually you will actually be able to select multiple regions to start from, but Tilton County is the only place you can begin in the demo so far. However, there have been some big changes. So around the map, a number of the locations have moved, there's more quests, there's a whole new main storyline added, there's been an absolute ton of bounties added, and just some other kind of cool little changes here and there. So if you knew where things were in the demo, don't expect to know where everything is in the main game. I knew the demo map really quite well, and I actually expected to get through this first county in, you know, just a matter of hours. I didn't think it'd take me long to kind of polish everything off. It took me probably closer to 10 and a bit hours to get through all of the content in the first region, and that's a region that I knew very well. So there's a lot of content there. I was playing on hard difficulty, so it took a little bit longer, just kind of getting used to some of the fights and that sort of thing. But overall, even playing on easy or normal, you will actually still be at quite a risk of death in some of the fights. So in the closed beta, there are two regions. So Tilton County, where you start, and the County of Arthas as well, which you get to later. And you've got to either complete a bunch of the main storyline or pay a whole lot of money, a whole lot of crowns to get through a border guard gate. There is another region that's hinted at, but you can't actually get into at the moment. So try not to pay the guards at that gate, because it won't get you anywhere. Of the two regions, the starting region, Tilton, is actually the smaller of the two. So the Arthur's County is probably about 15 to 20% larger, and there's a few more mini quests and that sort of thing as you go through it as well, and kind of side activities to do too. So in terms of size and content, you're probably looking at around about 15 to 25 hours of content for a single playthrough, depending on how much of the world you want to explore. If you only did the main storyline and skipped all of the side stuff, you could probably get through a little bit quicker again, but you'd be missing not just a lot of the story and the kind of world building that goes on, but you'd be missing enough equipment and materials to take on some of the harder content in the game. So there is a fair bit more there to do and explore, and it's been a lot of fun looking around. There's been a couple of kind of really key call outs that I've enjoyed a lot. So if there's an arena over in the second county, and arena combat has always been my absolute favorite. So really enjoyed that. The other cool thing is just walking and looking around the map. They've added a lot of new weather elements. And the weather elements are actually a really, really interesting addition, just from a visual point of view. And so as you walk around, you'll start walking along, and it'll kick off with a little bit of rain. There'll be some lightning striking buildings and things nearby, and it just looks really lovely as you wander the world. The sound can sometimes be cutting in and cutting out. I think it's just a little bit of an early access glitch. So I do hope that they fix that up, because it's just nice having some of the music and sound in the background as well. You will see in combat in a little while what happens when you start fighting some enemies in the middle of a snowstorm in the world map. But I'll call that out when we get back to it as well. Okay, so combat. Combat has undergone a pretty big revamp since the demo. So a lot of commentary and people speculated that combat was much too simple in the game because there was nothing like a miss chance or anything like that. And they didn't feel like there was much depth to the combat, which I think are definitely fair points coming from the demo. So moving into closed beta, the Shiro development team have done a really good job in kind of pulling combat up a couple of levels and really adding a lot more strategy to it and making it a little bit more kind of free-flowing. So it's definitely hard. You will be at risk of death. I think even on an easy playthrough here, you'll see a couple of my guys running on some pretty low health. But the biggest changes to combat start coming from sort of level 2, level 3 onwards. So you get Valor points, which are those little orange and yellow dots down at the bottom of the screen. And in the demo, these were a very finite resource. You had a set number before combat begun, and there was no way to refresh them. In the Wartales closed beta, you now have different skills and things on your characters that allow you to refresh these combat points as the battle progresses when they meet certain conditions. So it might be standing next to an ally at the end of your turn, for instance, might give you a new Valor point. Now, this is absolutely game-changing when it comes to how you play battles, how you plan battles, what your team strategy is, and how you want to skill and spec your teammates. It's an absolutely incredibly flexible system. And from the games that I've played so far, the variations are just absolutely huge, from a group of spearmen and archers that are really focused on range and zone control, to a group of melee combatants that just run in and try to basically lay down more damage than the enemy can dish out, locking down enemy archers and that kind of thing. And the flexibility of the system is really, really nice. And they've moved skill points up. So previously you got them at level 3, now you get them at level 2. And so the combat flexibility opens up really, really early on in the game. It builds at a slow enough pace that you can get used to what you have. And then by the time you get to the next level, you've already got a bit of an idea of what you're missing and what you want to add. So every level up feels good. Every new piece of gear and equipment feels really good. And you can really see the progression of your characters over time. So that's really, really good fun as well. All the professions have had a massive update and revamp. So the starting number of things that your characters can create already exceeds the number of things you could create in the demo. And so the tinker, who uses the workshop and the tool bench within your campsite, they have quite a number of things to create. I think it's about 24 odd recipes in the end that they can craft, many of which go in your campsite and change the way that your campsite and your rest time work, which is really, really cool. The blacksmith has a number of additional things that they can craft, but the blacksmith is not the only way to get gear. So in the demo, there was no way you could buy weapons, armor, that kind of thing. In the closed beta, you actually have a number of different places you can buy weapons and armor from, not in the towns themselves, but from roaming caravans and roaming refugee groups and weapon merchants, that kind of thing. The addition of those extra sale points is really cool, and you actually get offered some things that you can't craft yourself. So the blacksmithing really serves as a way to support anything that you're missing and fill in those gaps. Now you can see that we're just walking into a snowstorm. I was talking about the weather just before. I really love the weather effects. They look really lovely. It's just really nice walking around the world sometimes. In addition, with professions, so the blacksmith has more recipes. There's more things that you can learn to cook, though cooking bonuses are very similar to the demo. So if you did much cooking there, you'll be pretty familiar with it all. Most of it's just kind of cook meat so that it lasts a little bit longer, provides a little bit more sustenance for your men, and then some larger recipes like the apple pancakes, which give your team different bonuses as well. The alchemy profession has been is probably now the largest. There are over 40 alchemy recipes to learn. It might even be over 50, actually, just off the top of my head. Whereas in the demo, you could literally just craft medicine. So alchemy is 40 to 50 times larger. Now, some of the alchemy regents that you need to craft the different potions and things are very difficult to get. And do take a little bit of planning and prep to organise. So alchemy is something that you'll be using well into the late game and can give some bonuses that no other profession can. So I do recommend looking into alchemy and having a play around with it once you kick off. So here you will have just seen a battle in a snowstorm. So because it is snowing on the world map and I decided to have a fight, you will have noticed that the entire battle took place in a snowstorm and visibility was very limited. That was quite an easy fight, so it wasn't too much of a problem, but in larger fights, fighting in a snowstorm can be quite tough. And one of the things a tinker can craft, straight off the bat again, is a torch, which your characters can actually carry, and they're offhand, so there are more offhand pieces of equipment to use. And that increases your visibility in things like snowstorms or low light. And torches will come in very, very useful. You will not be able to finish some parts of the game without them. I won't say too much more there. There is a new profession in the game. So fishing is a new profession. As you roam around the map, you'll see little shoals of fish. And if you have crafted some fish hooks at your blacksmith, just using a little bit of ore, you can catch fish. So you're basically just trading some of your ore for food, and it's a pretty reliable source of getting food, actually. If your party's small, fishing could pretty much sustain you without spending additional gold. So there was a bit of, worry, concern in the demo that it was quite hard to make gold and keep enough food for your party to keep them going. In the closed beta, with the number of additional bounties that you can get in town, the addition of fishing as a profession, I certainly didn't run into any problems kind of feeding or keeping enough crowns in the bank for my party. You do have to make some tough choices, so you don't always get to do everything you want, and you will quite often be going, oh, if only I had more leather or more ore, I could make this thing. You will eventually get access to all of the resources, all of the equipment that you want. It's just a matter of prioritizing what you want first so that you are getting the most value out of each material that you get. by late game, you'll be having enough spare resources just to craft things to sell for some extra gold and that kind of stuff as well. So don't worry too much about collecting everything straight off the bat. Just look for those incremental improvements, and I do recommend trying to improve your weaker characters, so don't just go all out on one character, because they won't be strong enough to take down a party by themselves to start with. And even by the late game, you want the whole party to have some skills to contribute, obviously. So one of the other big additions to the game, which again, you'll see some spoilers as you watch through this video, are the addition of kind of the main stories of the region. So Tiltron County has a main story, and the County of Arthas has a main story. They are somewhat linked together, being counties that share a border. And depending on the choices that you make, the people that you support through the different encounters around the map, you'll end up coming to the conclusion of the main story in one of two different ways. I won't say what the two different conclusions are, but they're a really nice addition, and it makes you feel like you're having a little bit more of an impact on the world as well, which is great. In addition to the main story, you've got a lot of side quests and side stories that you can take part in. So the bandits that you fought during the demo, they're still here, still pillaging, and have their hideout down in the southwest corner. Had to think about that one for a second. The camp works in a slightly different way than it did in the demo, but overall pretty similar. If you haven't fought many bandits around the map, the bandit camp will be at full strength. If you fought a number of specific bandit groups around the map, the bandit camp itself will be easier to take down. And the bandit camps do have quite good loot, sometimes weapons, sometimes armor. So they are actually a pretty good spot to start if you want to get a little bit of early power for your team. And sometimes they'll have books of knowledge as well, which can be quite helpful in just giving you a little kickstart to learn a few different professions and skills that you can create with those professions. In addition to the main stories that happen around each of the individual counties, so very linked to the county, your party actually progress through some really cool stuff that are known as paths as well. And so paths are something that are completely new, haven't been seen before, and actually weren't really even hinted at in any of the Q&As. So the Shiro guys did a very good job of keeping that under wraps. But basically, any action you take in the game, it contributes towards what are known as the paths. And so the paths are broken down into four main groups, like power and wealth, crime, economy, trading, that kind of thing. And everything that you do contributes to one of these four paths. So if you steal something, your progress in the crime path progresses. And you don't have to choose one or the other. They all progress simultaneously, concurrently, and you kind of just do them at a little bit at your own pace. If you're not too sure about what you want to do in the game, I would actually recommend having a look at the paths, and so you access them via an icon in the bottom right-hand corner, the one with the little laurel on it. And the paths kind of give you little hints about what you should do. So if you want to progress down the economy path, for instance, you should start trying to trade the trade resources. So things like amber and pelts. Now, they're not fully implemented yet. From what I can tell by reading the paths, there are actually some features that will still be coming through early access that haven't made it into this cut of the game. But yeah, really keen to see, I guess, how it develops. And there's already an absolutely huge amount of content in there, so it'll be cool to see how it progresses over the next year or so before it does go into full release, which I think is expected late next year. But look, time will tell. Who knows what sorts of delays will come over the next 12 months after the previous couple of years. Overall, the paths are quite an interesting addition, and whilst I didn't feel like I had to, I didn't feel like there was anything holding me back on a particular path, the paths are actually limited to progressing through to level 5. So each path has its own level, similar to characters, and they're all capped at level 5 as part of the demo too. So your character, your team, in the demo, they could actually get up to level 7, level 8 if you were really, really lucky with a couple of fights. However, in the early access version of the game, you can only get to level 5. Now, I think they've done that for a couple of reasons. So every time you level up, you do get some skill points, and I don't think they want you to become too overpowered for the content that currently exists. So I think it's a bit of a balancing thing. But level 5 actually feels like plenty, and given the changes that they've made to the skills, where you get a skill at level 2, 3, and 5 now, and the way that combat is a lot more free-flowing, as well as the inclusion of additional offhand items, you actually have a lot more options for how your characters are built, how they progress in the game, and, you know, building on their strengths and weaknesses as well. One of the coolest things actually about the way that they've done their offhands as well is that depending on the situation you're in, you will actually want to have different offhands available. So it's not just get tier 1 offhand, tier 2 offhand, tier 3 offhand, and that's your progress through the game. Instead, what you'll do is you will carry a shield, you will carry a torch, depending on the character, you may also carry a throwing knife, a throwing axe, or things along those sorts of lines, and they have different tiers as well within them, and you will want to bring along the right tool for the right job. So for instance, in low visibility, it might be more useful to bring a torch than it will be to bring a shield. If you're coming up against someone that you know has quite a lot of archers in the group or hits really hard, having that shield might be the difference between your character living and dying. Now, depending on the difficulty, those decisions will change as well. So generally on easy, I've found it more than fine just to kind of go for all-out damage, not worrying so much about a shield. Playing on hard, if my character had not had a shield, they would have been dead more often than would be fun. Even with the shield, it is very, very difficult to stay alive on the harder difficulties, but even so, I did still find times where I wanted to switch the shield out for different objects and just to change the gameplay up and make certain elements easier. So I really like that. It's not a set and forget kind of item. The armor in the game is a little bit more set and forget. You do upgrade your armor, but not too frequently. So I think most characters will probably get an armor upgrade, you know, a couple of times, 2-3 times in the game. And there's a few little modifications you can make to your armor, but they're quite late game. They're quite difficult to get access to. So you don't end up tending to do too much with your body armor, but your weapons you will change around frequently. Some characters, it's even worth carrying around a two-handed weapon and whatever you would like with your one-hand and offhand as well. Again, just so that you've got different options during the fights. Because the number of fights aren't limited, which I know a lot of people will be really happy to hear, you can spend your time going around and fighting a ton of different things. Now, big spoiler alert, this fight that you're looking at now is actually one of the newest inclusions in the game. So these are plague rats, and this is the plague rat fight. Now, I've done this fight really early in the game. There's a couple of different ways you can approach the fight. So you can try to fight kind of a lot of the little rats, or you can just go straight for the mama rat that's there as well. You may have noticed at the very start of the game fight there were a few little infected outgrowths around the place. You can see one over on the right hand side of the screen. Early in the game, they are pretty much impossible to kill just because of their health and all of the poison around them and how many rats there are. Later in the game, though, I do recommend keeping them in mind, and it's worth saving a couple of these rat fights for later in the demo, because if you do them all too early, you actually won't have access to some alchemy ingredients if you don't do them all correctly. So just a little tip there, save a couple of the rat infestations until you're up at level 3, 4, 5 and have played around with alchemy a little bit. Otherwise, if you do just want to run in, it is a pretty easy 150 gold to kill the matriarch in a turn or so for most parties, I think. But jumping back into the discussion about combat, like the variation in combat in the demo has been great. And I don't just mean the skills, as I was talking about earlier, but the locations. So you've seen fights in snow, you've seen this fight against rats in kind of a little underground area. I mentioned an arena at the start of this as well, where you've got a much more limited space, party size, and the enemies are designed to fight in that space, let's say. In addition to that, you've got champions. So Lund, who was a little bit of a, wet noodle in the demo. In this version of the game, you will encounter Lund, and I just want to say, make sure you're ready, because he certainly brings the pain. A few people have referred to him as pretty much an ultramarine or a space marine. And it's a very apt description. It's just that he gets more actions per turn. So there's a ton of different things with the fights that just really add to the game, and overall the dev team have just done such a good job with it. So that's basically the first hour and a half of gameplay. There's a bunch of changes from the map size, the combat, the skills, the weather, professions, paths, the main stories. And I look forward to playing, not with you, I guess, but sharing some more content with you. I will try to kind of add some things in as the early access rolls out. I do have quite a few ideas for different parties I want to try, and look, I'm just going to share stuff because it's a really enjoyable game, and I look forward to playing